After the American Revolution ended in 1783, the United States was governed by the Articles of Confederation, a weak central government that met in whatever city would host it. The Continental Congress drifted. Philadelphia, Annapolis, Trenton, New York. It was a government without a home, borrowing rooms, dependent on the hospitality of state governments that could turn their backs at any moment. In June 1783, a mob of unpaid soldiers surrounded the Pennsylvania State House demanding their wages. Congress asked Pennsylvania to call out the militia to protect them. Pennsylvania refused. Congress fled to Princeton. The humiliation was total. A national government got chased out of town by its own citizens. When the Constitutional Convention met in 1787, this was fresh in memory. The new Constitution, ratified in 1788, included a provision, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, authorizing Congress to establish a federal district not exceeding 10 miles square that would serve as the seat of government. The location was left deliberately vague. That vagueness would nearly tear the young republic apart. Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, had a plan. The federal government would assume the war debts of all 13 states, binding them together financially and establishing national credit. Northern states, which had larger unpaid debts, loved this. Southern states, which had mostly paid theirs off, hated it. They saw it as a giveaway to northern bankers. The Assumption Bill stalled in Congress for months. Thomas Jefferson, then Secretary of State, hosted a dinner at his home in New York, the famous dinner table bargain of June 20th, 1790. The guests were Hamilton and James Madison, the leader of the Southern opposition in the House. Over dinner, they struck a compromise. Madison would deliver enough Southern votes to pass Hamilton's Assumption Plan. In exchange, the permanent capital of the United States would be located on the Potomac River in the South. It was a pure political trade, debt for land. The Residence Act passed Congress in July 1790. It declared that the capital would move to Philadelphia for 10 years while the permanent seat was prepared, and then relocate to a new federal district on the Potomac in 1800. The location was left to President George Washington to select. The act named 3 commissioners to survey the land and oversee construction. No city existed yet. It was, literally, fields and marshes and a few small port towns, Georgetown, Maryland, and Alexandria, Virginia. Washington chose a site familiar to him, the Potomac River near his Mount Vernon estate. The land was ceded by Maryland and Virginia, though Virginia would later take its portion back in 1846, creating the irregular diamond shape the district retains today. The French engineer Pierre-Charles L'Enfant was hired to design the city. He envisioned grand diagonal avenues intersecting a grid of streets, circles and squares for public monuments, and a Congress House on a hill overlooking a vast public lawn, what became the National Mall. L'Enfant was brilliant and impossible to work with. He refused to show his plans to the commissioners, believing he answered only to Washington. He was dismissed within a year. His plan was carried forward by Andrew Ellicott, a surveyor, and Benjamin Banneker, a free black mathematician and astronomer who helped establish the city's boundary markers. When L'Enfant was dismissed and took his plans with him, Banneker recreated the entire design of the Capitol from memory. This shows Benjamin Banneker's genius and proves his contribution wasn't just assistance, but a heroic act of memory and skill that saved the boundary survey when the lead architect abandoned the project. The city grew slowly, painfully from the mud. Congress threatened not to fund it. Speculators bought lots and lost fortunes. Workers were hard to keep. When the government arrived from Philadelphia in 1800, the Capitol was unfinished, the president's house was damp and barely habitable, and Pennsylvania Avenue was a rutted dirt track. Only about 3,000 people lived there. Abigail Adams, the first lady to live in the White House, hung her laundry in the unfinished East Room. But it was theirs. No state could claim it. No local government could expel them. When the British burned the city in 1814 during the War of 1812, Congress debated moving the capital back to Philadelphia, but ultimately stayed. The city rebuilt. Over 2 centuries, it became the permanent home the founders bargained for over that dinner in New York. The Commonwealth of Saxia built a government of separated powers where the Magister Generalis executes, the General Assembly legislates, the custodes judge, the preceptresses administer, and the prefects serve, like the early United States. And like the early United States, we have a dinner table bargain unfolding too, not between North and South, but between officers and delegates. the existing power of the preceptresses and the voices of the settlements. And like the parliaments of the early United States that convened in borrowed halls, our Commonwealth exists as a network of settlements and waypoints with no fixed center. Washington, D.C. was an act of creation. When the United States needed a capital, the states couldn't agree on which existing city should host it. New York, Philadelphia, each implied favoritism. So they carved a diamond of swampland out of Maryland and Virginia and built a new city from scratch that belonged to no state. So we will search the Guy-Back anomaly the way George Washington searched the banks of the Potomac River for the perfect host planet of our federal district, and build our assembly chamber there, a place that will be neutral and belonging to all of our settlements equally.